rationale behind the occurrence of natural disasters, right? Different types of natural disasters which are there. You gave a brief account of how natural disasters occur and what's the reason for this, right? Eventually, at the end of the day, you know, natural disasters are actually any kind of eventuality that occurs due to natural reasons, right?
Mhm.
Any kind of disaster or destruction that happens because of natural reasons, that's called natural disaster, right? So that's the basic point out here. So any mishap which occurs not because of man-made reasons but because of natural reasons, that would be considered as natural disaster for that matter. Now talking about the reasons of occurrence, there are plenty of reasons of occurrence of the natural disasters. But before that, we need to understand what are the different types of natural disasters which are there. One of the most commonest natural disasters which are actually observed and noticed nowadays is actually flood and deluge, right? And tsunami even, right? Tsunami used to happen in the past, and the frequency just started increasing. But nowadays it's under control. But flood and deluge does happen. As also earthquake is another disaster, like you mentioned that in Brazil, earthquake has become very common. And in many other country parts of the world, like if you talk about Japan, the land of the rising sun, in that part also, it is considered uh, that it is actually quite vulnerable to earthquake for that matter, right? So the idea here is to understand that there are certain areas and there are certain zones which are actually very vulnerable to certain kind of natural mishaps, and eventually, at the end of the day, it is going to have an effect on us in some way or the other, right? So when we talk about earthquake vulnerable zones, Japan is actually considered to be one of the most vulnerable areas of the earth where earthquake happens, and many other adjoining areas are also considered to be quite vulnerable, right? The real reason why earthquake happens is the fact that there's actually a kind of shift which happens under the surface of the earth. The tectonic plates basically they actually shift from the original space, and this actually causes shaking of the earth, and eventually earthquake actually occurs, right? Now, apart from earthquakes, all right, which has actually, I'm not sure in how many parts of the world it is, kind it is actually becoming common. I think nowadays the low magnitude earthquakes does occur in kind of many parts of the world for that matter, right? Though it doesn't causes any kind of high damage or any kind of intense destruction to the lives and properties of people, but it just creates panic amongst people out there, right? So that's the basic idea here. Apart from this, I feel that like you mentioned, in Brazil also nowadays, the vulnerability has increased, and people are actually feeling a little uh, kind of uh, kind of tensed and dizzy about the fact that earthquakes, is taking a toll on their lives and properties. Right, that's actually a reality for that matter. Right, Brazil is not really known for these kind of calamities for that matter, but since you mentioned it, actually needs some kind of introspection as well. What is the real reason why this natural disasters are increasing? But apart, I know before going to that part, let us actually talk about another, kind of natural disaster, which we call it volcanic eruption. Volcanic eruption is actually said to have occurred in the past quite rampantly because of the fact that nowadays, those active volcanoes are not really there. Most of the volcanoes have become dead, and in the past there used to be plenty of kind of active volcanoes. There are certain regions of the earth where there are certain mountains uh, which are actually notorious for this kind of volcanic eruptions, right? So volcanoes are actually active in nature. Some are actually dormant in nature. Some are semi-active. Some are dead volcanoes for that matter, right? So the real threat actually comes from the active volcanoes, right? So active volcanoes are the real reason why we have this kind of situation occurring, right? Why we experience this kind of situation? is the fact that there are plenty of active volcanoes, right? And they used to be in the past, right? And the threat actually is to those areas which are lying very close to those volcanoes, right? Because the lava which actually flushes out from the volcanoes, they actually kind of they are so intense in terms of its temperature. The temperature is so high that it can actually kind of burn the entire city if it actually gets into the city for that matter, right? So adjoining areas are always kept vacant, okay, whenever there is a threat of a volcanic eruption happening, right? So this is one thing here. Apart from this, flood and deluge is quite common in many countries of the world, right? Flood does occur because of plenty of reasons. Recently, in the northern part of India, there was a quite a high amount of destruction occurring due to landslide and mudslide even. All right, and it's very, very common in these hilly and mountainous regions, right? This kind of landslide. Basically means the land surface actually gives way to water, and water literally swallows up the land pieces, right? So that's actually landslide, and when it is
Mhm.
monsoon season, when it is rainy season, it becomes all the more dangerous for the matter. So that's how things happen here. I mean, at the end of the day, the real reasons, okay, of these disasters can be contributed to global warming. But are we just going to stop here, saying that this global warming is the reason for these kind of disasters? And what exactly are the ameliorative measures and solutions for taking care of this problem? Right. Let me have your thought on this very quickly, Bruno. If you have more, to talk and discuss, let's actually have your word, Bruno.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Dover. Indeed, when talk about its landslides here in Brazil, we have a huge amount of mountains, and in special Rio de Janeiro and in the coast of São Paulo, uh, we have a huge amount of people living in those areas that is considered risky areas to live, and they suffer. They are in a kind of vulnerable way of living. Okay, and the landslides indeed is uh, um, considered high risks of landslides that can kill people. It is a nature disaster. I don't know if those the heavy rains that impacted the coast of São Paulo and can be considered or can be because happened because of the climate change. But I think as it has never happened or seen before, yes, the chance of being caused by the climate change or global warming is very high. I think that's the point I'd like to highlight right here. And uh, yes, indeed, we are seeing around the world a very extreme weather, 45, 50 degrees Celsius. Right here in Brazil, we almost actually uh, didn't have the so-called winter season because the entire winter we only had uh, a kind of hot weather, the high temperatures. Small, a few days of cold weather, all right? And that's the reason. I don't know, but maybe it's being caused by the climate change. That is what I got to say, Tover. I don't know if you have anything. I don't have any question. If I have any further comments or something relevant, relevant to this to highlight, please, you can come.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, the question was the solution to the problems associated with natural disasters, how we are going to ensure that natural disasters are actually kept at bay. Do you think natural disasters are inevitable and they cannot be avoided, they cannot be prevented? And what's the reason why natural disasters occur? Because at the end of the day, we just put the buck on or pass the buck to the climate change, but eventually that's not the solution, I feel. Climate change might be one of the reasons why kind of this kind of disasters are occurring. But what really is the way out to deal with this climate change? I mean, it actually, the conversation would go to the next level, I would say. But eventually it is, the ecological balance with when it gets disturbed, that it causes so much of disasters associated with nature. And it is up to us to decide whether we are going to, make things more and more, kind of disastrous for ourselves, or is it that we are going to take ameliorative measures to, keep these natural disasters at bay? That's actually what I would like to put across here to you, Bruno.
All right, thank you very much. And the nature disasters, it's inevitable, and we cannot
Absolutely.
control it. Out of control, we cannot control something like that. But we can maybe reduce the
Absolutely.
nature disaster, reduce with some small actions, like do not throw away the treasures actually in the street, or to reduce the carbon emissions, or to reduce the use of oil to generate electricity. All right. But to a solution to avoid that the people, or to reduce the number of people that can die because of nature disasters, is to take out, all right, people from vulnerable places, all right, like the example of Brazil, where the people do not have another place to live and they have to build their houses in the mountain, and it's a vulnerable area because of the landslides. To take out those people from there, to build, all right, the houses a little bit more resistant, like Japan. Japan, it's a good example. Of course, we cannot avoid, or that the people die, but we can reduce the number of people that could die, right, because of the nature disasters. Like Japan, United States, we have all the houses, in order to avoid or do not leave the people vulnerable. The people has in their houses,
People have. People have.
I don't. People have in their houses a kind of a basement, under the house, that they can through this a kind of hole that is under the house, and to escape of the hurricane, of the tornado. Is something that can avoid people die. All right. And the nature disaster, it's almost impossible to predict. We some small actions, as I mentioned, can mitigate or can reduce the number of nature disasters. That's what I got to say, Tomer.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's correct. Eventually, that's a reality which you talked about. And like global warming, also you mentioned the same thing which I have talked about. And at the end of the day, we have to ensure that we take the initiative to ensure that global warming is actually kept at bay. And there are many other disasters which happens not just because of global warming, it's just because of erratic, measures and activities which are undertaken. Because of those reasons as well, we come across these kind of disasters, right? But we can actually talk about this hopefully in our, kind of next lesson as to the reasons and the effects and the solution to it. We can talk in details, hopefully, Bruno. Today we don't have so much of time, but hopefully in the next lesson we'll discuss in details.
For
Right?
sure. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you
Okay.
very
I'll see
much,
you
Tom.
again in the next lesson. Take care. Bye bye.
Take
See you
care. Bye.
next time.
You.